As for global news, many developments in the Middle East increasingly remind us of many Bible prophecies about the end time, especially around the Strait of Hormuz. This past week, the International Maritime Organization reported that nearly 2,000 vessels and about 23,000 crew members are currently stranded in the Persian Gulf. That's an enormous number of ships and people waiting to pass through the very narrow Strait of Hormuz, which is about only 33 kilometers or 21 miles wide, and at its narrowest point. Yet the shipping lanes are only about 3 kilometers, about 2 miles wide in each direction, separated by a small buffer zone. One can only imagine the massive bottleneck this creates. And as we have noticed in the past, that is, this narrow passage, the Strait of Hormuz, is one of the world's most critical checkpoints. In fact, we can already feel its effect here in rising fuel costs, higher food prices, and growing military tension. But these major developments remind us of significant Bible prophecies concerning the last days. The Bible speaks of what it calls the ships of Tarshish, vessels that since the days of Solomon, nearly 3,000 years ago, have been used to transport goods from distant lands to the Western world. What is especially remarkable is that the ship of Tarshish reappeared in the end-time prophecies alongside nations located in the very region we now know as the Gulf countries. These prophecies also portray the ships of Tarshish as playing a significant role during the day of the Lord, the future 7-year tribulation period. Could there be a connection with the hundreds of ships we now see gathered in the Persian Gulf? Or perhaps what we are witnessing today is not yet the fulfillment itself, but rather a warning, a harbinger of the events the prophets foresaw thousands of years ago. Now, bear with me for a moment before we examine these prophecies more closely, because we first need to understand the background of the name Tarshish itself, which is fascinating in its own right. Tarshish is one of the most enigmatic names in the scriptures. Originally, Tarshish was the grandson of Japheth, one of Noah's 3 sons, from whom many of the people of Europe and part of Asia are traditionally understood to descend. Over time, the name Tarshish became associated with both a precious stone and people, or a region or a city. Over time, we can see, by the way, that some believe it is the city of Tartarus in Spain, where Jonah fled. Others believed it is Paul's city, Tarsus, in modern-day Turkey, while others considered it the city of Tharos in the Italian island of Sardinia. This suggests that these ships were all from the Western world. But listen to this. Some believe the term became associated with ships that carried raw material from distant parts of the world to the Western markets. The name Tarshish may even be connected with the Akkadian root meaning to heat or to melt, from which the word Tarshishu, meaning refinery or smelting place, is derived. These ships transported raw material for refining, including metals and even grain for bread. In this sense, the imagery fits remarkably well with the hundreds of modern vessels that today transport raw material, such as oil and gas, from the Gulf region to the Western world. But over time, ships of Tarshish became a symbol of world economy and international commerce. And again, and remarkably, they appear in the passages dealing with the end times. One of them is right in the text of the war of Gog and Magog in Ezekiel chapter 38, where Persia, today modern Iran, is named as disturbing the flow of these ships. It is in verse 13 where we suddenly hear the voices of 2 Gulf regions, namely the merchant of Tarshish, also protesting the impending invasion. We read in the book of Ezekiel 38:13, Sheba and Dedan, and the merchant of Tarshish, with all its young lions, will say to you, have you come to capture spoil? Have you assembled your company to seize plunder, to carry away silver and gold, to take away cattle and goods, and to capture great spoil? Dedan is often associated, as we have seen, with modern Saudi Arabia and perhaps the smaller Gulf regions along the coast, such as Qatar and United Arab Emirates. As for Sheba, the name has historically been connected with Yemen and even Ethiopia. But what is especially intriguing is the presence of the merchant of Tarshish alongside these Gulf nations, raising their voices in protest against this gathering of nations, or of which, by the way, Iran and Russia are mentioned as Meshach and Tubal. By the way, Russia is. Are we witnessing that is today a warning of what is soon to come upon the world through the war of Gog and Magog, a war many rabbis actually believe would be the final great conflict between in the world between Israel and the other nations? In biblical prophecy, this war precedes Armageddon, and the two events appear very close to one another within the future 7-year period. It is these wars that will bring out the second coming. But the ship of Tarshish also appear in another end-time prophecy. They are mentioned as victim of the final war of Armageddon. In Psalm 48, verse 7, we see the ships of Tarshish chartered by the east wind in a context that points to God's final intervention in history. These great merchant ships, which presented commercial might, would now be chartered, pointing to God's dealing with human pride and earthly power at the end. In Isaiah chapter 2, they also appear during, it says, the day of the Lord at the tribulation times. But here is yet another side of the ship of Tarshish. In Psalm 72 and in Isaiah 66, we find them at the dawn of the Messianic kingdom, the millennium, carrying Jewish people back to the land of Israel from the nations of the world and bearing gifts from the nations to Israel. And most importantly, I want to bring that to you. We hear of many ships in the end time in the book of Revelation chapter 18, just before the return of the Messiah, which is actually in Revelation 19. Revelation 18 describes the collapse of world economic and political system and Babylon's fall. There, like the prophecy of the war of Gog and Magog, we read about the merchants of the earth who became rich. These merchants occupy a central place in the chapter and are mentioned at least 4 times. But notice that the Greek for the word merchant, emporos, a term for one who travels by ship for trade. It is related to the word gomos, which refers to ship's cargo. Thus, the language clearly points to maritime commerce and international trade across the area. These ships appear to be part of the same large commercial system. But there is one more remarkable prophecy to add to this one. We have seen that originally in Genesis, Tarshish was a grandson of Japheth, and he had a brother named Kittim, and the scriptures also speak of the ships of Kittim, also associated with the end times. While those of Tarshish were associated with economy, the ships of Kittim are associated with war, with military contexts. The ships of Kittim are first mentioned in the book of Numbers, chapter 24. In Balaam's prophecies, the same prophecies that speak of the coming Messiah as the star out of Jacob, the one who will ultimately establish his kingdom upon the earth. It is in this prophetic context that the ships of Kittim appear, and the prophecy speaks of naval battles. The ships of Kittim are mentioned also in the book of Daniel chapter 11, where another great naval confrontation is described between the Antichrist and opposing maritime powers. These are, by the way, very detailed and profound prophecies. Today, as we witness the growing presence of warships in military tension around the Strait of Hormuz, which actually these ships number over 100, one cannot help but wonder whether these developments are foreshadowing even greater naval conflicts to come in the time of the tribulation. Taken together, these prophecies concerning the ship of Tarshish and the ships of Kittim paint a striking picture of commerce, military power, being at the same time the very place where the Bible prophecies indicate that they will be actually the wars which is around the Gulf region. The parallel with what we are witnessing today are difficult to ignore and again may serve as a solemn warning of what is to come. And perhaps the greater message behind all of these prophecies is not to fear, but to hear the call and to turn to God, the one who knows the end from the beginning. That's why we have these prophecies as well. These events we are witnessing today may be his way of awakening the hearts of men, calling them to seek him and find eternal salvation in him. The salvation found only in Yeshua, the Messiah, who is coming back again very soon. As we will see in our study of Amos, that nothing major happens in this world unless the Lord has warned us. And this may very well be a major warning, not only for Israel, but for the whole world, that things are getting very close to the end.